Okay, good morning, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Is the microphone on? Yes. So, welcome. Your feedback that always distracts me. I'm like a squirrel.
Opportunities that could help spur economic growth while providing an environmental benefit. In July, Eastgate's Ed Davis provided an overview of the Ohio Public Works Commission Infrastructure Funding Program. The CAB also heard a presentation from YMC's John Braylich on Trumbull County's ADA transition plan, including the process to complete the project, as well as how the plan sets the county up to make meaningful improvements to accessibility and mobility. The CAB approved the following resolutions this past quarter. We had number 8-2021, 10-2021, and 12-2021. The CAB is scheduled to meet this evening at 6 p.m. and all are welcome to participate. If anyone wishes to attend, you can contact Eastgate's Justin Lundock for information. This concludes the report of the Citizens Advisory Board. Thank you.
Thank you, Samantha. Does anyone have any questions? Next up, we have the Finance Executive Committee discussion. Mr. Jim Kiddick.
Thank you, Julie. Unfortunately, due to some of the scheduling, we were able to have the Finance Executive Committee this past quarter. Things got a little bit shifted around. Obviously, we're having general policy today. We're just trying to realign some of our meetings. Great opportunity to do that since this is the first in-person meeting we had, but the new schedule for some of our meetings when it comes to TAC, CAB, and then the general policy, and then the Finance Executive Committees are now posted on our website. What we're looking when we look at the Finance Committee is to align us more on our quarter reports from our fiscal years that we're operating in. It would certainly help our accounting team provide even a clearer picture to the committee that's reviewing it. But I can assure you that the agencies have strong financial standings, and apologize that we weren't able to meet in advance of today. We're looking to meet virtually here later this month, probably really align it with the start of the second quarter of our fiscal year in October, and then get back to our normal in-person meetings here, hopefully in December. So thank you.
Thanks, Jim. I believe next up is the director's report.
Perfect timing. I wouldn't even want to sit down. Again, I just want to recognize and thank everybody for being out today and being able to, like I said, this is our first in-person meetings. I know we have a group, a bunch on that are following us through the WebEx, watching the live stream. We're excited to get back in front of people. Eastgate's office opened back up June 1st. We brought the entire staff. I'd like to just formally thank the staff for carrying the torch through the 15-month pandemic, as all of us have, but we were able to stay afloat, and not only stay afloat, but to move forward on many of our programs. So I appreciate your dedication and your adjustments and your patience as we learned to work virtually and now come back. But being back in person certainly improved our opportunities to communicate, not only with it as a staff, but as with our community. So appreciate everybody's patience. Also, I just want to recognize the TAC and their various leadership and Samantha, the CAB, your leadership to continue to meet and to continue to provide and the information back and forth from those very important groups that we have. We appreciate your due diligence to deliver those messages to those groups of individuals. Just getting a little bit, a couple of housekeeping issues. Since we last met, Eastgate was able to add to our staff. We added Dakota, another accountant, to our groups. We have 2 accountants. That's a good sign. We have to bring on additional accounting help is certainly a good sign. And we've been fortunate with some of the funding opportunities that we've been applying for and being part of. And then the success we've had delivering some of those in the past has certainly helped us get additional opportunities. So we welcome Dakota to the team and his assistance with our accountant. We've also added Eric. He's our communication coordinator. We've been talking about this for a while, about trying to get the message out. We've kind of been putting it to piecemealing it together with our staff that has other duties to deliver, and Justin and Jeff and everybody else has been involved trying to deliver our message to our communities. I appreciate their time, but being able to capture a full-time person to implement our communication strategy is evident and needed in our agency. I like to tell everybody we're not looking to brag about what we're doing. We just want to expand and tell everybody what we are doing. You have to celebrate small victories and build that momentum. But I think it opens the door for opportunities other communities may not have been aware of, things that are going on in other parts of one of our counties, or other cities or villages. So we will look to really flood the social media, and that's probably all I know about social media. We'll look to flood that. You've seen some of the updated newsletters we've been able to get out. And again, it's just about the good things that are going on, opportunities for this agency to assist those communities. So we welcome that. I want to touch on technical expertise and what this agency has undertaken in the last year when it comes to bringing technical expertise to the region. We have many challenges here. And people, I believe, after 5.5 years at Eastgate, I believe that sometimes we're afraid to ask for help. If you're going to get help, get experts in that, what you're looking for, how you're going to move forward. That's the recipe. What we've been able to do and capture the assistance in the CARES Act last year, bring it on 2 individuals, one for economic recovery, one for economic resiliency, has certainly paid dividends many times over in the last year. With Mike Ripko and James Dignan, their dedication to this agency and their dedication to the region. Now that we've found that recipe to be a success. And what I like to say, it's butts in the seats in their office working with us, hand in hand with our communities, but hand in hand with our staff. And that helps grow what we're doing, our experiences here. Just recently, since our last meeting, we've had Steve Kristen. He's carrying the broadband torch, 34 years experience at AT&T. Certainly has forgot more about broadband than I'll ever know, but he's already made dividends many times over in his initiatives and helped us to carry and implement the broadband feasibility study. We're also looking to add another member to the group, and technical experts, we'll call them contract employees, because they're again butts in the seats here in one of the offices for water, wastewater. We're out looking, bringing that expertise. Many challenges that we have when it comes to utilities, especially water, wastewater, and especially on the efforts to do economic development. We need to get a better handle on what we're doing as a region and act as one instead of acting as individuals. As you're all aware that I'm going to talk more about our regional utility infrastructure plan that we're going to be getting out here in the near future. But we need that expert in the office here to help us to decipher the information we're getting through that plan and obviously help us deliver that plan. So looking forward to having Steve here and then bringing somebody else on board here in the very near future. Now, I want to just touch base on some of the additional initiatives that we've been talking about and moving forward on. The Lordstown Smart Logistics EV strategy plan. That's money that we received, fortunately received $500,000 from the ODOT Statewide Planning and Research Grant back in, we applied for it in January, found out in April. We moved to RFPs and advertised that for consulting services. We're in the process of reviewing those RFPs. I believe next week we're interviewing 3 teams that put in for it, and we hope to have somebody on board here by the middle of this month. Aggressive plan to really help us understand the strategy when it comes to how do you move the region forward. And again, what I like to say, we use Lordstown as the attention it draws because of the investment already, but these are regional investments. Being able to take a look at what we can do as a region to grow. People work there, they may live in Canfield, Cortland, Youngstown, anywhere. So jobs are jobs, and we're looking at growth and really define our initiatives when it comes to logistics and electric vehicles. I touched on the utility infrastructure plan. We're slow to get that up to an RFP. It's waiting to get posted. Anticipating a decision from ARC where we asked for additional funding to be able to pay for that study. Through the ARC Power Grant is submitted in the spring. A decision is supposed to be made here in September. As soon as we hear and hopefully we're successful, we'll post an RFP and be very aggressive getting consultant selected or consulting team selected to help us really understand it. Again, we're trying to align what you have as the resources and really take advantage of the excess capacity of water in the area to make us more attractive to the industry that certainly relies on that. Many of you may know or may not know, right now MBSD serves the Youngstown area. I know Warren serves some of the region too, and then Aqua serves some of the region. But if you just look at MBSD alone, 21 million gallons a day for the region. Ultium coming in needs 3 million gallons more a day. So it's really an impact on what your water supply is. We're fortunate at MBSD, they have capacity to go up to 60 million gallons a day. So we got to be cognizant of what the industry needs right now to produce these batteries, this lithium, and everything else that goes along with that supply chain and the dependency on water. We need advertisement in San Francisco or Arizona that says need water, come to Northeast Ohio. We have it, they don't. We're going to work with the chamber to do a marketing strategy to take advantage of that. Before we get out there and get in front of ourselves and say we got the water, we better learn how to play nice here as a region and figure out how we can all share the resources and have a one-stop shop for businesses that come in here. Again, in every region, the community prospers if we can grow that economy. I want to just touch base. I talked about the 3-county broadband feasibility study. That was another study that we got results June 1st. We started working to implement it under Steve's and Mark's leadership there. 3 initiatives really taken off. We put a presentation. We had Lieutenant Governor Houston here in June, hosted him and presented our fiber backbone to Lake to River high-speed internet fiber that would tie in these communities and make that accessibility to the high speeds much easier. What I have to comment is that plan was 12 recommendations. That was just one. We're working on the other recommendations too. We're working on first and middle mile also connections, the affordability issue through the EBB program that's being piloted and really rolled out by Oakville Collaborative. We're assisting Oakville Collaborative in that effort. That's emergency broadband benefit that makes it more affordable. You might notice some billboards that are up in the area right now that encourage individuals to reach out there and get a discounted rate for internet services. And then I know that we're assisting up in Asheville County. They have a submittal to the NTIA for a $10 million grant to make accessibility first and middle miles. Hopefully it'll be successful. We've got a great application and that's going in very soon. I got a comment. There's no secret to our strategy here is to study problem, develop a plan, and then implement it quickly. Anybody in the old ODOT days, we used to say, I'm going to study a study. I got to credit Tony Ranker. Study a study that's going to study a study, and 10 years later, we're still studying the same study. The strategy is get a study, be quick about those results. They're good results, get a plan, get it funded to implement. So we showed that in all our processes here as we continue to study problems that affect our community and our region and be very aggressive to implement those opportunities. Two others that were in the process is obviously the Mahoning River. We did a feasibility study on economic development along the river. As everybody knows, and I've talked about several times, the dams coming out of the river and the initiatives that's been led started with the port under Joanne's leadership. It's really taken off in the Mayor's Association along the river. We won it and won out. One more coming out this summer, two more coming next year. So we look at the 9 dams. We believe we have 5 funded. 2 more, we're looking for opportunities, and we'll have the other 2, which will be more of a challenge. But those dams being removed, more importantly, the sediment behind it being removed, the toxic sediment, return the river to a free-flowing state. But credit to the group for recognizing, okay, now that they're out, what do we do with the river? So there's a plan that's been out. We've got community input through charrettes, community meetings to say, how do we develop those pockets along the river to take advantage of that great resource? So we're looking for opportunities to fund that, maybe part of another application we put in here in the fall or spring to bring money in to develop pockets along the river. Maybe it's a river walkway. I don't know, but there's all kinds of ideas. That's again, that studies. All these studies are linked to our website. Please take advantage of them. The last one, really getting to the end of the jam recovery plan study that was taken under by YSU and their team. Great results, really identified verticals on how to move the region forward by diversifying the economy. It talks about EV, it talks about logistics, it talks about additive manufacturing, IT, and broadband really being the centerpieces of the verticals. We're looking to be aggressive when we take, how do we now move forward in all those verticals? And then there's horizontals here too, that everything overlaps when we talk about diversity, equity, education, workforce, all those come together here, but there's opportunities for us to advance this region by taking advantage of that well put together plan. We're going to turn around and look for funding opportunities and sort of, I teed myself up to pass the buck here, the microphone over to our next speaker, Ellen Heinz, who's from EDA. And I'll let Julie introduce her, but what I wanted to just make sure everybody's aware, I think most of the audience and everybody watching are aware that EDA has opportunities for funding have been many in this, through this recovery. The ARP plan to bring additional resources to help grow economies. The timing couldn't be any better for this region because we have a study that it's completed that tells us how to move forward. Now we just be looking for funding sources to implement some of those projects, whether it's a research center, whether it's expanding research center for battery cell storage or logistics to grow the distribution centers or broadband. All that's being defined in the plan that was produced by YSU. And what we're going to do is build out an application through the Build Back Better EDA grant opportunities here. Mike Ripko is going to talk real brief on that opportunity, but it all does tie together. Again, what I like in all engineer, I need a plan and I'm going to try to deliver it. So we're excited about the opportunities that are in front of us here as a region, excited about the team, the communities, and again, we look forward to working with everybody to continue. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. I'd like to welcome Ellen Heinz from the Regional Economic Development Administration, the representative for Ohio on the EDA's American Rescue Plan investments and its 6 Investing in America's Communities programs.
As we're getting that teed up, I must mention, I forgot, Ellen was here yesterday. We had an opportunity to go on WRTA, provided a bus. Thanks Dean Harris and his team for that. And that opportunity, we toured many of the sites in our 2-county region when it comes to economic development. We were out in Lordstown. We showed some of the successes at the Excellent Training Center for YSU, YBI, and great entrepreneurship opportunities being started now and then being thought of. We worked our way to Lordstown. We went past FedEx. We went past TJX. We found our way to Ultium and then worked our way back down to BDMI and RG Steel. The opportunity was 1,000 acres possibly there. Went to Bright and then worked our way back down Route 11, which I hope is our fiber backbone opportunity here in the near future too. So we appreciate Ellen's patience with us and willingness to drive and see the sites. I think that picture, I'm sorry, we also went to Golden Triangle and Gary and his team led a tour of that too. I think that picture of what's going on in this region is so important when we apply for this funding so that we can kind of build up where we're trying to go, share our vision. So we appreciate your patience, your time to come see us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. The pleasure was all mine. As I mentioned yesterday to the team, this was my first visit out into a community. We're all still working. I'm actually located in best tour I've ever been on, honestly. Extremely well planned, executed. I actually remember everything that we saw, I think. And I think it was very impactful and demonstrated very well the progress that you've been making in the plans. So, wonderful. Okay, well, my presentation today is just to give you kind of a basic overview of the Economic Development Administration, some of the things that we look for, not only in the ARPA programs, but also in our regular program funds. Answer any questions you might have at the end. So it all goes back to our mission. It's to lead the federal economic development agenda by promoting innovation and competitiveness, preparing American regions for growth and success in the worldwide economy. How do we do this? We do this by assisting economically distressed regions in creating higher paying, sustainable jobs, supporting bottom-up regionally owned economic development initiatives, serving as strategic catalytic seed investments, attract and leverage private capital investment, and promote innovation, entrepreneurship, and regional expansion. Can you hear me now?
Can we leave it off?
Okay, that's fine. I can speak.
Yeah, okay, it was there. Thank you.
The people on the
I'm
right
ready
here.
then.
Yes.
And just to let you know a little bit of background about myself, I've been with EDA for almost 11 months. And previously, the last 25 years, I spent a third of my career in workforce development and education, a third in the private sector. I helped launch a couple of new manufacturing facilities, one being working with a wastewater treatment manufacturing company. And then I spent about a third of my career local economic development, both at the municipality and beyond, and at the company as well. Again, just talking more about our vision. EDA's Chicago region, as I'm sure most of you know, is Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Minnesota, Ohio, and Wisconsin. So what does that mean to you? That means when we receive grant applications, requests for funding, that flows through that region. So applications come in, and Eastgate just does an amazing job. We have 5 economic development districts in Ohio. Amazingly enough, that only covers about a third of our state. Most other states in our region have comprehensive coverage with their economic development districts, and we are working to try and further develop that pipeline. But I just really want you to know that you appreciate being part of this team, having an active SES, having a group that's very well connected to this federal agency. So when you apply for some funding and hopefully working closely with Eastgate on that, those applications can come into me. And then we can do a technical review, and certainly working with Eastgate before that is great too. We're going to make sure that they're involved in applications regionally. And then it goes into the queue when you submit it. The queue means it's in a line of applications that we've received in for a 6-county region. That means a Youngstown application might be going up against a Chicago application, and all are voted on. I'm not a voting member, but I do represent the Ohio project. So it's really critical that there's not too much information in your application, that there's enough to really illustrate what the issue is.
It's part of a much larger group called Reimagine Appalachia, which covers Ohio, Pennsylvania, things like West Virginia. Which covers 3 of those districts. How do you deal with an application for cross region?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. So whether they're multiple states within our region or they connect with multiple regions in the United States, we just work completely together. So the Economic Development Administration, in a situation, if we had an application that touched multiple states and different regions, we would have the EDRs connect the other economic development representatives from the other states and probably schedule a meeting and then talk to our leadership team about which, what state should the application be the main applicant.
So we can submit it to you in the Chicago district and then determine which others.
Yeah. Bring the other partners in. Great question. So it's just really, it's extremely important that, you don't want to spend, I think Mark and I talked about this a little bit, it's, you want to make sure your application is complete and thorough, because once it goes in there, that's the review process, and you either get a denial letter after that or merit for further consideration, but you don't want to be missing things, but you don't want to wait too long. But whatever you can do to make it as highly competitive when it goes in there, it's really critical. So my role to be close to the communities, to have expertise in our programs, be able to provide technical assistance, start to finish, project pitch person, and then of course additional contact information. So again, kind of going back to the application, when we present projects, we only have a few minutes for each project that come out of our state. So we have to take that information from the application material, not from knowing people within the community for the past several years. It has to be included. So who exactly receives our investments? It's not any private company, not any private individuals, focusing on competitive merit-based grant assistance to public-private partnerships, states, local governments, tribal organizations, universities, and nonprofits in economically distressed communities. I folded the last point because the competitiveness is based on how you can demonstrate the creation and retention of private sector jobs, increased private investment, and other factors that include economic recovery. We talked a little bit about travel and tourism. That'll come up in just a couple of minutes. It's hard to say, okay, well, if we put this new pier, it'll help us recover because we really had a severe hit due to the pandemic and our travel and tourism. Where are the jobs going to be? Well, I think for our region, it's typically been because the dollars have been so competitive, high-paying, high-quality, advanced manufacturing types of jobs, healthcare jobs. And then you need to demonstrate how your project's going to be able to commit to those. Well, now with the travel and tourism dollars, we're able to look and have more of a flexible viewpoint on how that impacts the economy. Strategy-based plans, what your executive director was talking about is the fundamental piece of EDA funding. Has to be in a plan, right? You have to understand what's going on, be in a plan, and then get the funding, and then implement and deliver on what you're promising. So if you don't have a plan or you don't know what the problem is, we actually do have dollars to support those plans too. Our investment priorities have been updated a little bit with the new administration. We're looking, of course, always at recovery, resiliency. Equity was not on there before. It's very much on there. That doesn't have to mean it's a distressed urban area, the inner city, New York City. It could be also a small rural community. It could be Youngstown, it could be any community, but we want to make sure that that distress is identified and that we help support it. And then we demonstrate how your application will build the equity. And technology-based economic development, environmentally sustainable development. If you can have, incorporate solar or energy efficiency somewhere into your application. Workforce development, manufacturing, and exports for direct investment. So we did have a few CARES Act applications within the CARES Act that were denied, came back, and we helped them rework their application. And 2 that were funded actually somewhat recently in Ohio. One of the big ones was they were able to really demonstrate, fill out the reports for job creation. They were able to better and more effectively demonstrate how they were targeting the investment priorities. So equity, again, just just laying out an example economic development planning or implementation that advances equity across America. One or more traditionally underserved populations and underserved communities with geographies that have been systemically or systematically denied a full opportunity to participate in aspects of economic prosperity. We've got public works projects, economic adjustment assistance, additional EDA programs we've had over the years, assistance to coal communities, nuclear closure communities, and disaster recovery. Talked about the sets. It's great to have a plan, but if your project is not incorporated in that plan and we can't draw out what your project ties into that plan, it's kind of a no-go, right? So with the regular program funds, you have to have sets and you have to demonstrate distress. ARPA funds are more flexible with eligibility, but just having a sets alternative or something in place doesn't necessarily mean your project will get that. Local letters of support, I just want to touch on this, and again, I think our economic development districts really do a great job with this. But when you get local letters of support, when we have people reviewing these applications, again, mostly from our Illinois office, they've got hundreds of pages. They go through letters upon letters upon letters. I worked in local economic development. I know it's very hard to get letters of support. Have it come from your heart. When you're looking at these, they go through and they review these applications. They have the 10 letters, and if the 10 letters say the identical things, they're like, what's going on? So it's not that they question the project, they just question the letters and the support that you really have for the project. So again, documented, we flex a little bit more flexible now in regards to our match. You can actually have a letter by the assigned authority demonstrating the match. It doesn't necessarily have to be through resolution now. No strings attached, source of funds, and cash versus in-kind. Obviously, for non-construction, we will look at an in-kind match, but cash matches are always most. And of course, making sure you've got the authorized staff members for construction projects. What do we look at? We look at the project site and the utilities. They have to be owned by an eligible applicant. Another industrial park project that we had, which later was funded, they applied for funds to make improvements to the roadway, water, and the water lines. They included the gas line. Well, they didn't own the gas line, so that part had to be taken out of the project. So you've got to have, are there mortgages or liens on the project? You've got to have good engineering equipment. If land for a project has been acquired through eminent domain, we cannot have it participate in the project. So that's big. And also, with any kind of construction project, if you do not have a preliminary engineering report and a complete narrative and environmental issues, those will slow down or possibly even deny the project. Non-construction project. Where are those? Economic justification for the project. I think we saw this a lot more with CARES. We are going to see that with ARPA. Project has to demonstrate what the issue is, illustrate how your project is going to fix it. Why should we fund your project? Why is your project going to fix it? And then validate. If you're saying we need this and we're distressed because we had this plant closed, you've got to attach that form notice. Or I'm a coal community, then you need to demonstrate it. And we were talking about that a little bit yesterday, but there's a lot of money in ARPA for coal communities. And there are lists out there, coal community or not a coal community. If you could make a case for how your community was impacted by coal, it doesn't mean you're right next to a coal mine, but how your community was impacted, you could qualify as a coal community. What makes your application competitive? Again, having a confirmed match, it's available, unencumbered, committed. Geographic distribution, trying to get applications and support not only across the state, but how does your application not just serve a single community? Are you looking regionally? Again, demonstrating the distress, investment, regional partnerships, and is the project part of that strategy? And does it meet the priorities? You've got planning assistance for short, long-term, local technical assistance, industry sector strategies. And again, just looking at eligible applicants. And then for our regular program funds, as a point to note, and we're actually looking, we had a team call yesterday, and even for ARPA funds, we're looking at this. So just to be noted, it's not a requirement, but looking at if you've got a high unemployment rate, which by our criteria is more than 1% over the national average for a 24-month period, or if you've got a low per capita income less than 80% of the national average, highlight that in your applications. Again, not a requirement for ARPA, but we are going to be looking at that. When you say we want this 80%, project cost, and we're only going to provide a 20%. It's really important to demonstrate that. And some things we just as kind of a recap, we can't do. We can't fund for-profits. No grant awards for infrastructure owned by a for-profit. We had a community apply to help or talk about applying to help infrastructure in their industrial park, and they just turned it over to a private developer. Cannot touch land that's owned by a private developer. So we do have projects where the land has been donated to the community, municipality, port authority, and those are projects that we can work. We also just, we're very careful about it to make sure if you're going to have a workforce development center or project that we are going to own it, you know, that it's going to be in your hands for at least the duration, 20 years and beyond. So we have had projects, as crazy as it sounds, where people have made improvements to buildings and then tried to sell them. And it's not so much a common thing, but if you just look at life and what's happened with the pandemic, you could have somebody involved with a community organization, maybe they pass away. The next person in there doesn't know that they got an EDA grant 8 years ago. And then they get to the point where they've got to sell off their assets. So just some things to note. And again, the information that will be collected, again, Eastgate's done a great job. We're working with them. Mark put together a really awesome form where you can implement all of your answers electronically. Just getting this general information. This is what we look for, these 12 points in all projects. Again, you have to have site control and some other factors. We talked about what makes it competitive. Some other helpful resources. If you haven't been to eda.gov, I would go there, sign up for the newsletter. You can specify what you want to be updated on, but really can also help you see what other community projects are getting funded throughout the United States. Oh, and one last thing too, when you look at projects, we really are looking at, especially with all this money, how is your project transformational versus transactional? You don't want to see something that's going to be there today and not part of your long-term solution. So ARPA, right? So $3 billion American Rescue Plan funding. Eastgate's been very active, right? And looking at before the money came out and since then, doing a great job with that. Looking at jobs for today, communities built for all, and regions for the future. These are the 6 programs. We've got the Build Back Better Regional Challenge, which focuses on industry clusters, really helping transform communities, regions. So a lot of money involved here. The 2 basic stages. One is you're going to, applicants would apply for the planning grant and to plan it, and then projects that are chosen will be selected to go to the next stage for implementation. Some things that keep coming up on our calls are we want to see regional calls, both at the regional level and also under headquarters. So I've had communities say, well, if our application is not a statewide application, is it going to be competitive? And I think it just depends on what your case is, who you're partnering with. It might make sense to do a statewide application, or might not make sense. The regions and the industry clusters are different in each area. What's important, I think, is that your application is effective. It demonstrates what you're going to achieve and how you're going to achieve it. The Good Jobs Challenge, that's about those workforce development partners, as networks, how to really refine the talent challenges in your area and connect those to industry and having them buy in. As somebody who was a workforce development director years ago, I think that's really a great program too. Both the Build Back Better and Good Jobs will be evaluated at the national level, but we can provide a little bit of assistance technically locally. I know there are a lot of partners are reaching out to share some of their ideas right now, and there's not a lot that we can do in regards to influencing, or giving you a lot of input in regards to concept. We can certainly say, I don't know if that's going to be an eligible project or not, but those will be evaluated on the national level. And then we've got our economic adjustment assistance, which is more money right into the regular product fund, generally speaking, that we normally have, and for the most part, an 80-20 match. Again, it gives communities more eligibility and better access to dollars. Indigenous communities, these are essentially targeted towards those tribes and organizations. So Ohio pretty much has 5 programs to tap into. And then we've got travel, tourism, and outdoor recreation. The state has a non-competitive amount of money that they've chosen, that they have elected and pursued through EDA to take. what they're going to do with those dollars, I'm not sure at this point. There's some different talks about how they might utilize the money. And then there are competitive dollars, which are going to flow through the Chicago region. So 26.2 million, how much do you think that is for each state, right? So each state doesn't have the identical amount of population. So probably for Ohio, it's going to be somewhere around the $4.5 to $6 million range. I have projects coming in already that haven't submitted a formal application that are looking for $1 million. So not that it's got to be a life-changing travel and tourism project to basically knock out every other partner in the state of Ohio to be a competitive project. So that's not to say if you really, if there's a travel and tourism connected trail that goes all throughout the state of Ohio and has, it has some relevancy or can make the case for it, that there's an opportunity there. I certainly welcome everybody to contact their economic development district and myself to vet project ideas. That's just important to keep in mind. That came up on the call yesterday. While we're, there might be some small communities that $100,000 would be a game changer for their travel and tourism industry. And there might be some communities that have $1.5 million or $2 million project that can really substantially verify and validate how it will impact them. I'm not going to say don't ask for those amounts. I'm just going to kind of put that into perspective. If that's the money we have in the state, we certainly want to make it go as far as we can. And then the statewide planning and research networks, it's more money again for the planning and research. So for the economic adjustment assistance, we have about $86 million to spread throughout the Chicago region. So again, when you're dividing the number, that puts a lot more money on top of our regular program funds. And our regular program funds now, we are taking in applications that's available October 1, and we're starting to review those. So just to break down the numbers for statewide planning, $9 million, Build Back Better, $1 billion, travel tourism, and outdoor recreation, $750 million, economic adjustment, $500 million, indigenous communities, $100 million, and good jobs challenge, $500 million. So for the travel and tourism, just to touch base on that really quickly too, looking at, again, big transformational projects. EDA's bread and butter has always been infrastructure, water lines, sewer lines, workforce development centers, investing in YBI, right? So if you've got projects in your community, signage, you could certainly apply. You could not even talk to me and submit an application tomorrow. That's up to you. But as somebody who's applied and received a lot of grants and financial assistance in the public and private sector, to have somebody be willing to help review your application, make sure the materials are in, I do think that's an advantage. But those are just the types of projects we're looking for. Peers, again, transformational projects that will be there for years to come. So the coal money, there's a little bit of confusion in some of the regions too. Some people think, well, that coal money is at a separate pot of money. It's not separate. It's embedded within the regular programs. So for example, if you're in Ohio, you qualify as a coal community. Let's say you've got a water line project. You could demonstrate you don't just want a water line for a community that has no businesses there whatsoever. You have to validate, okay, well, if we don't get this new water line in place, we might have company B either leave, or if we put the new water line in place, it's a baking company, they need more water, they might add a new line and might find 50, 100 jobs. So if you've got that type of a project, that's great. And you're in a coal community, that means super, you qualify for the coal money and the regular pot of economic adjustment assistance funds. So you basically have that 2 chances, I guess, or it expands your chances. If you're not a coal community, you can't touch those coal dollars. So what happens if we have a lot of great coal projects, we'll super, and that money runs out that's designated for coal within the regular umbrella program funds, then that means that those coal projects can apply for the other project funds. Coal communities are a top priority. I know we've talked about this. This is a great opportunity for a lot of the partners in this region. And in summary, $3 billion, $300 million for coal. 25% of the funds are designated for the tourism sector, up to 80% grants. You can apply at grants.gov. Again, highly recommend you reach out to Eastgate before you go in and submit. Reach out to myself, certainly. And then ARPA grants must be awarded by September 2022. That means that money is going to expire soon. So all projects have to be completed by the end of September in 2027. And projects must be consistent what your economic development district says. You need a letter from your economic development district saying how it aligns and then demonstrating how it ties into the investment. These dollars, again, are meant to be transformational. So look at those projects you couldn't afford otherwise and what's it really going to take to change them. Oh, and one other quick point. If you go to eda.gov/ARPA, I think EDA, our headquarters group, nothing to do with our local or regional groups, did an outstanding job. You've got a webinar that's an hour, you've got a one-page summary, you've got an FAQ sheet, and you've got our notice of funding opportunities. When you're looking at grant applications, you wonder what's going to make my application most competitive, how are they going to evaluate it? Everything is in our notebook. Everything. That's how the federal government operates. So they're great supportive tools. And again, I think your Eastgate partners have really looked and researched these programs well. So.
Yeah, I have a few questions that hopefully they aren't too redundant. So for Build Back Better and the Good Jobs Challenge, since they're gonna be evaluated nationally, how much of the equity piece is going to be in that evaluation? Ensuring that underserved individuals, communities, maybe your smaller organizations that aren't necessarily in the day-to-day discussion with Eastgate per se as their regional, council of government, is that equity piece ensuring that the folks hardest hit from the pandemic are in this future plan? Is that going to be scored substantially high since they're going to be so nationally competitive?
Yeah, great question. I would advise everybody to go back specifically to the Delpho and make sure if your project ties into equity, you can hit it. You hit it exactly like they're asking you to demonstrate it. And you're right, they're definitely, and actually we had a question yesterday on a regional call say, hey, from another state, say, we've got an application from a real small community that's been, desperately underserved for a long time. I don't even think they're part of an economic development district. They don't even want to ask for 25 million. Maybe they want to ask for 5. Said absolutely apply. Absolutely apply. We are looking at that. I think what's challenging too is you look at, in Eastgate and the Great Things we have here. Well, look at New York City, right, or Chicago. Look at the resources there. Build Back Better is a lot of money. What agency do you have that can say, well, I'll get a $75 million grant and 25 partners and start dishing out the money and have it all gone in 5 years and it's all going to have great results, right? That's not found necessarily in a community. Like I worked in local economic development with 17,000 people and it was very hard for us to get funds, very hard. So with that being said, I do think equity absolutely matters. I think for Build Back Better, incorporating as much as you can, big, little, small, everybody, I think it makes a great application. You have, at the end of the day, the application has to make sense, right? So you can have a small community say, hey, we don't have money for all these things. We want to have this recovery. Here's our plan. It's simple. We don't have the money to implement it, do it, but here's how we're going to demonstrate it. So that's what we're looking for. In EDA applications, this group knows it well because Eastgate's got a lot of grant money and the partners here saw wonderful projects yesterday. You have to, again, whatever your project cell is, it has to be in your application materials, but don't go over because if they go through and the reviewers are looking, okay, they mentioned 800 statistics in here. Now I've got to track those down and, it needs to be simple and effective, but you have to illustrate the point. So I think small communities absolutely have just as much a chance as anybody else. But it just has to be, you got to go over that application over and make sure every point you make, you can validate it. Because I've seen them go through the process. They go through applications. Okay, here's a question. They say their community's distressed, 2 jobs closed, boom, attached 2 more notices. Okay, check. So they're going through these applications. So again, it just has to make sense. And it has to be that you're going to be able to implement it and sustain it. I think the small community I worked in, we had some great ideas over the years, but where's the sustainability for some of ours? That was our road challenge. Yeah.
One,
sure. I think you had 2 questions.
yeah. So is the intent really? So is EDA's like? I don't know if you can answer this the way I'm about to frame it, but is the intent really for EDA to award the dollars to these larger organizations such as Eastgate and then ensure Eastgate is working on the sub grants to the entities that are gonna carry out the performance metrics in the application. Is that really sort of the intent? The reason I'm asking, I work on behalf of, I'm with a consulting firm, and I work on behalf of some smaller workforce development entities, United Returning Citizens, for example, that does some workforce development with folks coming out of incarceration. I'm working for some smaller municipalities, and I just want to ensure if the intent, if we're not going to be competitive looking at any of those alone, we're not in reality. So is the intent that I need to make sure that I'm having the conversations with Eastgate to ensure that my projects are included in the application?
And that's another great question. EDA's intent by this program is to see great projects. So we've had the calls, the national calls, and they said, okay, does it have to be an economic development district as an applicant? And all the programs kind of specify more details, but they said, we want to see great projects. We want to make sure that the group that's applying can administer them, right? So a big thing when we've gone through some projects is, and actually it was one project that did get awarded the second time through because they cleaned up their application, and we spent about an hour on the phone and went through things, and it was a little tiring for them. And but at the end of the day, they were like, oh, that's great. It's like, well, do you work with other federal grants? Have you worked with federal grants before? Do you understand federal procurement guidelines? Do you have experience with that? Yeah, they did, but they didn't put it in their application. So I think at the end of the day, all these programs absolutely, little communities or regional director grew up on a dairy farm. So we're looking for those projects, but you just have to, whatever application comes out, you have to make sure that you can demonstrate, you can administer it, you've administered those types of projects before, or if you haven't, how are you going to do it this time? So if I think as a consultant or even just a small community, talking to your partners and see what other projects or applications there might be out there to see how you can be included. I look at managing your resources too. That's a lot of time invested in a project. You don't know if you'll get awarded or not. So, I always try to make the most of my time. And then that's definitely up to you, but I just think anything groups that can do to see how collaborative you can be in these applications, it benefits everyone, as long as it can be managed and it makes sense.
Thank you.
Sure, great questions.
Are the grant applicant always local government or some quasi-government entity, or is it be a visitors bureau? Can it be a private sector business? What are the?
Never private sector.
Separate, okay.
Never individual. So we're mandated by our federal guidelines, but for profits, certainly we've, looked at 501c3, C6s, the chamber, sometimes it depends on what their affiliation designation are. All of that's outlined in the notice of funding opportunity, but they have stated for some of these specific programs that they are open to some different applicants. In the past, it's not that as long as you're a nonprofit, you've got to be a nonprofit, you've got to be a public or governmental agency.
So how about matches for the grants? If there is a partner that may be a private sector entity, suppose it's an ISP for broadband or something else like that, can matches, you have matches in a single grant application, matches coming from multiple entities that might be partners?
Yeah, that's a great question too. We do, and I'll tell you, the evaluation process, it's specific, but it's also somewhat general too. So you might have a great project that has a very simple match from a municipality. And then you might have a project that doesn't make, it isn't as clear as what they want to achieve. It has 50 matches, which looks great because 50 people are involved, but it's really about the project. But definitely, if it's a great project, it makes sense. If you can have layers in the match, I think that's super foundations. I know we do have some that are coming down the pike right now. I don't think they've formally submitted, but with some private sector match, I think you have to explain where that match is, right? So one of the questions came up is, okay, well, we're looking for match for our building and it's named by, Jonathan and Susie Miller, whatever, some private sector dollars, right? It's not even from their foundation. And then I think they're just questions about the project. So any other specific examples that anybody has too, I'm happy to either answer those if I don't have the answers from this group. But I think it's important to see that layering investment if you can, for sure. But if you can't too, that doesn't make your application not. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just gonna keep nerding out.
Hey, what's your name?
Kristen Olney.
Okay, oh, hi, Kristen.
Hello, how are you? So I've read all the no flows, and the singular one I find a bit confusing is the planning one. Does the planning have three subcategories within that planning application? The first being planning for statewide entities, and then two other programs within that application? Is that the way I'm correctly reading it?
Yeah, generally speaking, if we have not worked, I don't know if we've had the applications come through for that, but if you have a specific project in mind for those, I would definitely recommend sending me an email and then I get that back to our regional leadership just to see, again, is it gonna look competitive for our region, and how that'll. Great question.
Thank you.
I didn't hear your response, so is it three separate ones in
Uh,
that?
Generally, yeah, but we also have additional planning dollars through EAA that we can utilize, so I mean, that's one thing too, I know a lot of times people are like, well, how much money is left or at different times? And, you know, we always, of course, keep track of the money in our region, but if we run out of money in our great projects, you know, there's always opportunities. Again, it's, you know, can we move some money from different funds, or can we talk to another state? Does the project hit two states, so we divide up the money, so. What's important, I think, is that when you have a project, you talk about it, you get support in applying it, you apply for it, and then go through. I mean, I always think that really helps to run the project idea through first, especially if it's an unusual project, to see if it's something that the region thinks is competitive, highly. Oh, yep, we got one.
One more question. It's a technical question. I know EDA can fund projects, infrastructure projects on land that was acquired by eminent domain.
Cannot, right.
Enough. Does that also apply to property that might be acquired under the threat of eminent domain? The reason I'm asking is commercial property, the city adopts a plan as a file of the legislatively says we have an intent to acquire property. That may affect the tax status on capital gains commercial property. So sometimes it's actually beneficial. Doing the Gateway project in Cleveland, various owners, property that have been portfolio for decades, said, please file the intent to acquire, because then we can basically wash out capital gains over a decade. So it would be very helpful. We have a number of areas down where may need to use that sort of approach. So
Sure. If you could specifically email me that question, I will run it directly up to legal. So, I know whenever we're talking about projects, we're looking at site control today, but that is a wonderful question. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. Thank you again, Ellen, for that presentation. Very informative, a lot of information. Appreciate your time and opportunity to visit our region here too. Again, I encourage anybody to have questions, please reach out to Eastgate, around direct. We'll try to find answers for you also. But at this point, I'd like to bring up my group. We're just going to kind of run through just an overview of what Eastgate's looking at from a regional perspective when it comes to the grant opportunities.
Can I just mention one last thing? So, obviously, I work for the federal government, I report to very, very equitable. Want to make sure little big community, everybody has a shot at it. My personal goal is to make sure every patient goes high, is highly competitive. Find out maybe it's eligible, but there are some big red flags and still apply. You know, I'm not going to recommend anybody not apply, but I could certainly give you the feedback to make sure. But if you're committed to trying to make sure everything is highly competitive as possible, that doesn't guarantee you're going to get it. You have to be committed to the project.
So
Thank you. I worked for YSU for many years and they said, never follow Jim Tressel on the podium. And now I work at Eastgate and never follow Ellen Heinz. There's nothing I can say to you that is more thorough and comprehensive than what Ellen just told us. And again, thank you. You spent 2 days with us and we know your time is valuable. We appreciate your feedback and your insights here. But I did join Eastgate as a consultant a year ago yesterday, September 1st, as a coronavirus economic recovery coordinator. And I learned 2 things. I said, one was the money goes fast. $3 billion sounds like a lot, but please don't wait till 11:59 on the deadline when it's due. Start writing on the way home from here. I mean, honestly, start collaborating, build your teams and your ideas and concepts. Don't wait. Last year, when the CARES Act money was released, we thought it was very attractive, 20% cost share. And that money was highly sought after, highly competitive. And by October, it was supposed to last for a year, but by October, there were sufficient applications that the money was gone. So don't wait till the deadline. Start your projects right now. And the second thing I would tell you I learned when I was with YSU, we had the research office. Faculty members who submitted research grants had to tell the research office, we're submitting a grant. We had to know, we had to clear it through our research office. Eastgate is not in that same position. You could submit your grants independent of Eastgate. You don't have to tell us about it. And you're welcome to do that. We think with our relationship with Ellen, with the expertise that Joanne has, and that Mark has, and the other team members here at Eastgate, you get some benefit if you tell us. That's no guarantee that we have the secret sauce to make sure you can be awarded. But we picked up some hints yesterday that Ellen shared with us about how to write a better proposal. Mark has designed a form that basically gives you a chance in maybe 1 page to summarize your concept. And so if you're on the fence, is this a good idea or not? Take advantage, work with us, fill out that 1-page form. We'll work with Ellen to review that. And Ellen's been excellent in coaching us and saying, this idea won't fly, but have you considered this approach to the same problem? And it might help reorient your thinking and help you be successful. So again, you're not obligated to share your submittals with us. We encourage you. We think we can help you maybe form partnerships, coach you up a little bit, offer you some suggestions. So that's probably all I wanted to offer here. This is lots of money, but it is going to be very competitive. There's a lot of communities that have a lot of need, just like ours. And we need to be first, we need to be exceptional, and we need to have exceptional writing and content on our proposals. So let us help you do that. And we offer to do that on behalf of the Eastgate team.
Thanks. Okay, next up on our agenda is the resolutions for passage. I believe we'll be passing these via email as well. If you want me to read through them in any case, or just go on to open discussion. Okay. Well, I'll start open discussion. First, I'd like to have Beth Carmichael stand, please. If you're not aware, our Trumbull County Tourism Bureau won a national award in the last several weeks, which is a smile. It was based on the online visitors guide, correct?
Our 2020 visitors guide, which somebody wants to see it, I did bring it. And really what put us over the edge when we were competing with Kansas City, Missouri, and St. Pete, Clearwater was the amount of research and the marketing driven results that we attached to that project. So something we've been doing and building into for the last 3 years is making sure that our marketing is results driven, and it was clearly identified in the reason why we were a finalist in the first place, and then of course why we. So we're really excited. We're excited to be able to put Trumbull County on a national map. I have lots of friends in the industry across the United States, and one of them was visiting about some golf product we're working with here in Trumbull County a few months ago, and he was sitting at one table and I was sitting at another.
And there, everybody's like, when they announced Trumbull County, they're like, where the hell is Trumbull County? And he's like, oh my God, I know, they've got great golf, they've got dude, they've got this. Packard, I mean, he just gushed about his experience in Trumbull County, and that, for me anyway, is what it's all about. I think as a county, as a region, we're doing a lot of great work that needs to be more recognized on a national level, and that's what we strive for in Trumbull County Tourism, is to make work that, and put out work that is recognizable, and we're just happy that we were recognized on a national level.
Thanks, Beth. I also wanted to thank Ellen for being here and touring with us yesterday. I personally work on the Golden Triangle project with our partners, and it's a very important project that will create and retain jobs for our region, so we appreciate your time. Lastly, I won't go on, but I do want to thank Eastgate Regional Council of Governments for your assistance over the last year, especially Jeff. Is he here or is he in this office? He assisted our Trumbull County with the Warren Comprehensive Plan update, and we appreciate that. And I know that other staff persons at Eastgate, Grant, and I'm not really sure who else is assisting with the countywide zoning update. So that's another important project that's ongoing that we've been working on for quite a while. And all the other good things that are going on. So thanks, Jeff. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to add?
I just want to remind you what Ellen said. You don't have to bring us your application to review, but you do have to get a letter from us that is in line with our SEDS. I just don't want you to forget that part, okay?
I just want to add too, and I can, I'm very fortunate to have going to them. It's your choice whether you want to get somebody else to review the call or not. There's with any project, they represent the whole. It's just saying, you know, how can we help these projects? Yeah, I can't speak for Eastgate, but it sounds like they want all the projects that come through this region to all be important. So I think the more people that you have championing the project, the better.
Thanks, Ellen. I do have one more item to bring up. The Youngstown Air Reserve Station Joint Land Use Study, Military Installation Sustainability Grant is ongoing, and I wanted to mention that we had some valuable feedback this week at a public meeting in Vienna. We had a day-long session yesterday with the technical and policy related people, several of whom are here, Gary Schaefer, Colonel Dignan, and we appreciate your participation, and we're proud to be part of that project, that team project, to help preserve our air station.
I think we have Lauren Tillis from ODOT brought some handouts. She wanted to just give a brief description of what she shared with us.
Yes, so I brought some handouts for the, our capital improvement plan, map for Mahoney and Trumbull County. I just brought a few, if anybody else needs any, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself or anybody at District 4, and we can get you some maps. Also, just so that you're aware, we're going through our lockdown in the next coming months for our fiscal year 23 project. So those will get locked down into the quarter selling it. And then also sometimes some of the outer year projects move around a little bit depending on funding.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? I want to thank Joanne too for joining us yesterday. All right, I guess we're adjourned.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.